Welcome once again to the Stranger Than Fiction podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Meekin. I'm the author of the True Spiritual Warfare books, Nightmare in Holmes County and 225th Street, which both tell terrifying true stories of spiritual warfare and paranormal activity in real-life haunted houses. Both books are available as paperback, Kindle download, or audiobook versions at Amazon.com. Before we get started tonight, I would like to encourage you to subscribe to the channel, share with your friends, and also like the video tonight, and feel free to share your comments down below. We have two very special guests tonight. We will be investigating the truth about UFOs and alien abductions. With aliens being all over the news and UFOs being all over the news and all these, crazy stories like the Miami Mall incident, etc., I think it's important to take a biblical approach to this phenomenon. And that's what we plan on doing tonight. And that's why I have the two very special guests, Joseph Jordan, who is the author of the book Piercing the Cosmic Veil, You Shall Not Be Afraid of the Terror by Night. That book is available at Amazon.com. And Joseph is a MUFON investigator for nearly 30 years, and he's the founder of a group known as CE4, which investigates and helps those who have been victims of alien abduction. Additionally, we have a special guest tonight, Rhiannon, who is the host of Sky Tribe Ancient Mysteries, which you may have seen on TV or on YouTube. You can check out her videos there. And Rhiannon is also the director of UFO Expo and UFO Expo TV. Both guests will be contributing information to the podcast tonight. So a little bit more information on Joseph. He is by profession an environmental health and safety specialist for a leading aerospace company in America space program at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. He's a 30-year lifetime member of the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON, the world's largest and oldest all-volunteer, not-for-profit civilian UFO investigation and research organization. Joe is also a Bible-believing Christian. He's the head of CE4 Research Group, an investigative research group that has studied the so-called alien abduction phenomenon for over 25 years. The research findings of CE4 Research Group have been published in over 40 different authored books in the past 2 decades. Joseph Jordan recently released the new book on Amazon, Piercing the Cosmic Veil, You Shall Not Be Afraid of the Terror by Night, where the published findings of the CE4 Research Group lean towards a more likelihood of the so-called alien visitors being a localized, interdimensional, even spiritual nature rather than the extraterrestrial biological entities from other planetary systems showing advanced technology. Again, this book is available as paperback or Kindle version at Amazon.com. Rhiannon is a talented and dynamic individual with a passion for exploring ancient and sacred sites, the paranormal, and all things unexplained. As the director of UFO Expo and co-host of UFO Expo TV, as well as guest co-host of popular podcasts such as UFO Man and Unidentified S4, she has made it her mission to help in disclosure by introducing topics from investigators and experiencers from around the world. She is an expert in engaging audiences and spreading awareness on cutting-edge topics. Having traveled to over 18 countries, she has a diverse range of perspectives and is well-versed in different cultures. Her tireless efforts as a show host and investigator have made her a highly sought-after figure in the industry. As an advocate for the unknown and unexplored, Rhiannon's unwavering curiosity and determination continue to inspire those around her. And with that, I present Joseph Jordan and Rhiannon Alley. Welcome once again to the Stranger Than Fiction podcast. Again, tonight as guests, we have Joseph Jordan and Rhiannon Alley. Am I pronouncing your names correctly? Awesome.
Yes.
So the topic of discussion tonight, I'd like to get into your opinions and your views on something that's becoming mainstream news at this point, which is all of this UFO and UAP activity. And, we just had government hearings discussing these things. Who would have ever thought we would be here? But I think it's very relevant. And so I would like to, have both of you share your opinions on what you think we are dealing with. I have done podcasts in the past that, I give my opinion, and I think we're on the same page here. But, you guys are people that are credible, and you have experience. And so your opinions are very valuable. But Rhiannon, why don't you go first and give us a little bit of information about you and your background? Your mic got muted.
Okay, here we go. Weird things happen when we're all talking about these things.
Yes.
So my name is Rhiannon Alley, and I'm an explorer, and I started out exploring ancient civilizations and places over 19 different countries over the last 10 years. And I've gone down like one rabbit hole after another. One door is opened, and I'm the event coordinator for the UFO Expo. So I do conferences. So it just kind of all ties in, and my Sky Tribe Mysteries and the UFO Expo and then the paranormal. And now things are shifting, as we can all see. It's like the UFO realm is starting to become more hoaxy. And I ended up meeting Joseph, and he's helped me kind of decode some of these experiences that I've experienced and other people that I know have experienced, and break things down in a more logical way for us, I guess, to understand this whole melting pot of paranormal activity and UFO experiences and abductees and that kind of thing. So I'm so glad, Patrick, that you were able to have us on and kind of meeting of the minds and bridge the gap on a lot of these topics.
Well, thank you for coming on, both of you. I greatly appreciate it. And, it is strange. I'll say, you guys both are aware of this, but I've had all kinds of strange interference trying to get this program set up tonight. Even StreamYard, there's problems with StreamYard. I'm not able to get my virtual background on, so I'm sitting in front of a green screen, which is never the case normally, I had issues where my camera would not even work. I had to reboot my computer. My camera still would not work. I prayed over the podcast then because, I think there's some spiritual interference. I do believe that. I don't think it's just technical, especially because of what we are talking about. So I really do appreciate both of you being patient with me as I'm trying to get things up and running. But with that, Joseph, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure, Patrick. First, thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you.
By profession, I'm a environmental health and safety professional for one of the leading aerospace and rocket companies located here at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. It's my second round being able to work out of the Space Center area. I worked back during the shuttle program, and when the shuttle closed out and they started looking at private industry, at that time I left the country and ended up becoming a contractor for the U.S. military over in Korea, which I spent the last 11 years there.
Okay.
And then finally, when private industry got going, I saw an opportunity to come back home and took that opportunity. And now I'm back in Florida working for one of those major companies, private industry companies. As far as UFO and alien abduction research goes, I started into this 31 years ago, 1992, kind of accidentally. Picked up one book that kind of puzzled me. This particular book, UFO Crash at Roswell. That book sent me down the rabbit hole. Um, I had no interest in UFOs at all prior to picking up that book. That book, when I picked it up on a trip, I was headed out to Alaska to visit my brother, um, looking for something to read. I thought I was picking up a science fiction book, but I turned it around, looked at the backside of it, and it said it was factual scientific research on an event that happened in Roswell, 1947. None of that made sense to me. I mean, it still sounded science fiction, but it was something that, because I'm a curious type of guy, I needed to know what they were talking about. And it wasn't long after finishing that book, I was introduced to the Mutual UFO Network, the largest grassroots UFO organization, research organization in the world, founded in 1969. I've been with them since 92, and I've had the opportunity to be a state section director for them here in Florida. I was also the national director for South Korea when I was over there. And now that I'm back home, I'm still a member. I'm a lifetime member. And back in 1996, beginning of 96 or 95, we realized that in our research with MUFON, as field investigators for MUFON, which I was initially started out as, it seemed to be like the answers were not going to be found dealing just with the UFO research. As we encountered people that claimed to be alien abductees, logically thinking, I looked at that and said, well, if these people are claiming contact with the entities that are supposedly on the UFOs, wouldn't they be the front line of the research, or shouldn't they be? Mm-hmm. And that's where my focus turned, and we formed CE4 Research Group aside from MUFON, because back then MUFON wasn't set up to actually be doing abduction research. So we set up a separate entity, CE4 Research Group, and we started investigations into alien abductions. And our findings over the past 25 years or so have led us to understand that this is probably something that most people aren't understanding it to be. They're thinking it's something that shows that this phenomenon is what people are not what people are thinking it is. It seems to point to a more spiritual aspect of it, and something that aligns itself very well, more than any other avenue looking at it, with biblical scripture. Right. And that's something that we started putting together. And over the past some years, with our collecting of testimonies from the abduction realm, I was able to put together the book Piercing the Cosmic Veil just a couple of years ago. And all of our findings are there so people can have access to it.
That's a very thick book, and obviously you have your facts straight, and there's a lot of good information in that book.
Yep.
Where is that book available?
It's available on Amazon in Kindle or in paperback.
Okay. Yeah, that is definitely looks like a very good read. Like I said, right away I looked at the thickness of the book, and I mean, as an author myself, I know that's a lot of work to have a book that thick, you know.
Well, the way I put it together was it's in three parts. The first part is the culmination of the 20-some years of the research itself, how we came about it, what our findings were. And that covers the first part of the book. And then I knew there were going to be questions, and I wanted to address the questions in the book rather than everybody come to me afterwards with questions. I wanted to answer them, ahead of time and include them in the book. So what I did is I had a CE4 Research Facebook page with quite a following on it. So I put it out to my followers. I said, look, guys, I'm putting a book together, and I know people are going to have questions. So I'm giving you guys the opportunity to ask those questions. Give me the best questions you could come up with that you think should be in the book that need to be answered for somebody novice to this information. And I said, if you come up with a question that nobody else has asked, then I'll credit you for asking the question in the book. So they thought that was a pretty neat little idea. So I ended up with about 35 good questions that I used, and I credited the people who asked them. And they covered a gamut of, the realm that people would be asking questions about, and it turned out really good. The one thing that, as I started looking at the questions, I knew that some of the questions I could answer no problem, but there were other questions that I knew my peers in the research realm, the Christian research realm, had already answered and probably answered better than I could ever answer. So what I let the reader know is that they may not all be my answers to the questions, but if they're answers that are in there because of my peer, I'm using their answers, then I want you to know that I accept what they're saying. I agree with 100%. So it also gave people an opportunity to understand that this is not just about me and my research. There's other researchers in the Christian community that are contributors to this information and contributed to the finding of what we have. And I wanted people to understand that. So that's the second part of the book. And then the third part, the last part, I've accumulated about 250 to 300 testimonials that I'm able to share from people that are what I would call the evidence for our findings. And I included 60 of those in the back of the book. I thought about putting like 100 in originally, but the book would have been way too big for publishing. So I whittled it down, and we decided on 60 would be good. So hopefully in the future, I'll have another book coming out where I can include some more of those testimonials.
Yes. Now, Rhiannon, there you go. Probably some more technical things going on here. Let me ask you a question, Rhiannon. In your research and your experiences, okay, does this tie into a lot of the ancient civilizations? Is there a connection where these things kind of overlap? And then the second part of the question is, do you feel like these things all tie together with the paranormal?
I am still putting it all together because this is such a fresh, what Joseph's researching is so fresh with me. Just in the last, how many months, Joseph? 3?
Yeah, not many at all.
Since I contacted you. So I'm still wrapping my head around everything that I thought. I'm questioning everything that I've been through. And it's all connecting, but it's kind of overwhelming because for such a long time, I think a lot of us were kind of like the New Agers. Oh, I'm not religious. I'm spiritual. I carry rocks in my pocket for protection, and I stage my home. And, you think of all these things, and it's been like a New Age movement. So all this time, I feel like I was searching and seeking like everybody else, and curiosity, trying to find answers. And the answers are in front of us, but we've been so deceived and so persuaded with our culture to go in these other routes.
Yes.
That we believe to be true. And we're like, oh, we're getting hotter to the answers. We're getting hotter. We're going to crack the code. And the code's already been cracked. We've just steered away from what we thought. So to be honest with you, I'm still going through this awakening on my journey, with Joseph's help. But my eyes have been opened, especially since the last incident that we had on one of our films that I did a documentary on with Tom Reed. It was a crazy story. And I don't know if you want to address that, but that's why I contacted Joseph in search for answers, because I was in, the New Age where, paranormal activity, that's really cool. Let's go get some cameras. Let's, see if we can see something or feel something or experience something. And the curiosity gets to you. But I was filming with Tom Reed from Unsolved Mysteries of the Berkshire's UFO stories and incidences. And on set, on location, Tom was picked up and launched 10 feet away in the air like Superman. And, he's not an acrobat. you know, and it was witnessed by our friend that was walking with him, who was a retired police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to stop production. On production, our cameras during a lot of these investigations and our filming did not record. It showed recording, but there was so much interference that it did not record. A lot of our equipment, the batteries completely zapped. I mean, there was so many weird things, orbs, so many paranormal activities that happened during our filming that we had to go back and film. We couldn't finish it. We had to go back, and our film crew, they quit the first go around. So I just, after having to stop the production, I just couldn't believe it. I just said, well, what is this? What are we dealing with here? Is this the government messing with us? Is this, what poltergeist activity could pick somebody up and levitate him and just toss him? And it's actually viewed by somebody else as well, who's highly credible. Yeah. And he was bleeding top to bottom. He was bleeding. And this was on a flat surface on a dirt parking lot. No rocks, nothing, just walking to the car to get some sodas while we were filming, and this whole incident happened. We got back, all of us got back, and weird things were happening. Our computers were not working, our audio, even our mouses was not working. And you're talking like expensive gaming mouses. Yeah. And I just was searching for answers. And I'm like, there has to be a reason for all of this. Mm-hmm. And I found Joseph on the Nino Corner show and with David Rodriguez. I think David Rodriguez. Yeah.
Nino Rodriguez. Yeah.
Nino Rodriguez. Okay.
Yeah.
So I heard Joseph talking on that show, and I'm like, I have got to get a hold of him because maybe he can help me cipher and decode what this is. Yeah. I spoke to him. Wow. I mean, our conversation was amazing. And now I understand what this whole demonic realm, it's not just in your head. Right. This stuff gets physical.
Absolutely.
And I did not realize this whole other realm can affect every aspect of our life.
Absolutely. So, I find it interesting that you were there doing basically UFO research, and then you're suddenly dealing with paranormal activity and what would be, from the paranormal field, their view, would be considered what you said, poltergeist activity. It's like, that's interesting. That's not what this was about, but suddenly that's what we're dealing with, So that's very interesting. Another thing is, with people that get into the paranormal and researching the paranormal, I'm all for, if you can prove something scientifically, okay, if we have equipment that will prove something is going on, and I'll give a for instance would be an EMF detector. If you can show that an electromagnetic field is occurring when the paranormal activity is occurring, and I'm talking generally, this is like transient EMF, an EMF field that moves. It moves. Okay, why is that moving? If you have an EMF field around an electrical power box or something, yeah, that makes sense. Around a microwave oven up close, yeah, that makes sense. But when you have the field moving, that's strange. Why would that be?
Yes.
And so I'm all for, if there's scientific means, photographs, things like that, I'm all for, recording things, and there might be EVPs. Sometimes I'll tell you guys up front here. Sometimes I've done interviews on other paranormal shows, and they had activity while they were interviewing me, and they had EVPs appeared on the recordings, during the interviews, So I'm all for proving things scientifically. But a lot of people go out and they're dabbling, and things do follow them home. Now, I don't feel like you were dabbling. I feel like you were trying to really research something, and it became, a little bit more revealing of what it really was, and it will mess with you. And I've said this for years, they love to manipulate electronic devices. And I think that's similar to what you were experiencing. But man, a grown man being picked up and thrown, that's demonic. That's a powerful spirit that has the ability to do that.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever seen? I'll just mention this. I already kind of had my views already pretty secure in what I thought all of this was, as far as the UFOs and the alien abductions and things. But years ago, a friend of mine said, and we were talking about spiritual warfare and whatnot, and he said, "Have you seen the movie The Fourth Kind?" I said, "No." He said, "You need to watch it." He said, "I know it's just a movie about, abductions and whatnot," but he said, "It really starts looking like possession to me," And when I watched the movie, I was like, yeah, that definitely does look like possession, But Joseph, would you mind kind of get into, where your research, where did you start seeing things in your research that started directing you down a certain path where you are to where you are now?
Well, when I first got into the UFO research, right at the very beginning, I have to tell you, I was an agnostic humanist. I had no belief in God per se. I was growing up with my parents, traveling all over Europe. I was an Army brat. My parents are both devout Southern Baptists. I attended church with them. I did all the steps that a good kid was supposed to do with their family in church. But I was never a committed believer myself. I had friends of mine that gave their lives to the Lord, but I never could make that commitment. It's just like it didn't seem to be there for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I stayed with the church all the way up to my senior year. And then I heard something in the church that caused me to leave the church. At that time, that in my senior year, that was 1971 when I graduated, there was a war going on that I wanted no part of. A lot of America wanted no part of, and they were trying to get us out of it. And that was the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
It was the last place that we were living at. The last place my father had duty station, which was Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. And right outside the base in town there is a church that we went to. But a lot of the soldiers went to that church too, the young soldiers. And these young soldiers were in training for Signal Corps, radio operators, things like that. And they were pretty much headed to Nam. Odds are, if you were there, you were going to go to Nam. And I'll never forget, it was the spring of that year, my senior year. I was still in the church. I was part of the youth group, the youth choir, all of that. And I'll never forget this one time where this one soldier come in and he just broke down in tears. And he had gotten his orders for Vietnam and he was really scared. And the pastor there tried to comfort him. And he comforted him in front of everybody, tried to, and he made the comment, and I'll never forget it. The comment was, you know, this is for God and country. And I had to step back for a second. I'm going, well, wait a minute. I understand the country part. I understand serving your country.
Mm-hmm.
My father was a career soldier, and I understood what that was about. But God didn't tell me this was a war that I needed to be part of. And I was going, sitting out the draft the whole time, waiting for my number to come up back during this time, because I was eligible for the draft and seeing, waiting for those numbers to drop where I would be called. So I was living in fear too. And I wanted no part of this war. Enough information had come out that we knew this wasn't a good thing to be part of. So that took me back that comment was made in the church, that this was God, for God and country. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
no. I said, that's not true. And that turned me against the church. And from that point on, I stepped out into the world and lost my cover of church and a church family. So by the time I got to this in 92, still an agnostic humanist claiming to be then, that was my point of view, my perspective looking at this UFO phenomenon. I came into this with a knowledge for science and a, a yearning for science and science facts. That's just the way I was. So this was like, I understand you guys are saying there's things happening, but for this to be aliens, you need to show me the evidence. We weren't we weren't seeing the evidence. Matter of fact, we still aren't today. We're not seeing evidence that this is alien at all. I've been with MUFON for 30 years. MUFON's been around since 1969, and MUFON will tell you we don't have evidence that this is extraterrestrial. After all this time, after hundreds of thousands of cases, we don't have that proof. All we have proof of is something unusual is happening, a phenomenon that's due its exploration to try to find out what it is, because it's affecting so many people. The one thing I started to see when I became a state section director for my county is I had to hold monthly meetings. That was one of the requirements as a state section director. The meetings had a twofold purpose: to be able to share what MUFON was doing and share our findings with the general public, get their interest up into ufology, and answer any questions that they may have the best we could, but also to bring in membership, because MUFON's a not-for-profit organization and they rely on membership dues and contributions and donations to make sure they can keep the job going and what they do for investigating cases. And I was fine with that. But the one thing, when you put a sign up on a door at a place, and we never charged, we used a library, by the way, because libraries don't charge you for the room, and as long as you're not charging, and we weren't supposed to charge. So I put a sign up, UFO meeting open to the public, free. Not thinking what kind of people would show up. People like us, actually, looking back on it. But yeah, some strange stories started coming out in our meetings. A lot more than what I had bargained for. The sad thing is the people thought we had all the answers, but we didn't. We were actually relying on them to help us find answers, because they were the experiencers. They were the ones having these powerful things happen to them that they couldn't explain. What we needed to do was hear their stories so we could investigate them. Initially, we started out as UFO investigators, following up on sighting reports. But as I started holding the meetings, I realized there was a whole other category of people that were coming to these meetings. They weren't just people that saw UFOs. And this particular group of people were different. They were not happy people. They were actually very distraught. They looked like they had been in combat. They were like they were suffering from PTSD of some sort. And I was very careful on how I talked and worked with them. These were the people that I later found out were called abduction experiencers, or we use the term experiencers. And as I listened to their stories, I thought, logically thinking, these people claim that they've been in contact with the entities that are supposedly flying these objects that we've been tracking and not being able to get anywhere with. And I thought, logically thinking, these people are the frontline contact point of this phenomenon. Why wouldn't we be researching them more than the UFO phenomenon? Because this is frontline. So I talked to my fellow investigators that I had trained up working with me, and I laid this idea out to them. I said, how about if we kind of turn our focus, not drop the UFO investigations, but turn our focus in the direction of these people and their stories. Because I think if we're going to get to the truth of what this is, it's going to be with the abductions and the experiences that these people are having. So they said, sounded like a good idea. So before we started, I told them, I said, we need to educate ourselves the best we can with all the latest research information that's out there. This was back in early 90s. To be able to prepare ourselves for this work so we don't cause any more damage to these people. First and foremost, it was their care we were concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
Getting answers about the phenomenon was second. And I've kept it that way all along because these people were hurting. These people had had their lives turned upside down by this experience, an experience that they didn't ask for. Something was happening to them against their will. You know, it was almost criminal if you think about it, what was happening to them. If humans had been doing this to them, we'd have locked those humans up a long time ago, you know,
Mm-hmm.
thrown away the key for the things that that had happened to them. But this was something that they had no idea what was causing it. They didn't know who these entities were. They didn't know how to stop the event, and they never knew when it was coming again. And which it did. You know, once you've had these experiences, it seems to be a life pattern that you have. So as we focused into this, there was another commonality I recognized as we listened to them talk amongst each other. And this was a very important piece that I felt needed to be looked at. Because in our research, we had learned that from the leading, you know, abduction researchers in the realm at that time, that these experiences couldn't be stopped any way that they knew of. And they were asking, you know, why was this happening to certain people and not others? So those were the two major questions in the abduction realm. But as I was listening to these people talk amongst themselves, just kind of, you know, listening into their conversations at the meetings, I started hearing them say things like, have you been to so and so? Maybe they can help you. I've been talking to them and working with them. And it seems to be helping, but not really. And I thought, wait a minute, they said that this couldn't be stopped. So who are these people talking to that seem to be getting, you know, able to help them or trying to help them? So I finally cut in on the conversations one day and I said, you know, can I be part of this conversation, you know, as a researcher? And they said, sure. And I said, you guys are talking about getting help for this. I says, where are you looking for this? And they filled me in. So what I understood there was a realm of people that were trying to offer help more than just having them sit in on a what do they call that, group therapy, you know, where
Mm-hmm.
you sit with others like yourself and boo-hoo on each other's shoulder just to know you're not alone. But
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't stop the experience, you know, and if I don't really think it helps any at all, to tell you the truth, except to know you're not alone and you're not crazy.
Yeah.
But that's not what we were looking for. You know, these people were looking for help to make it stop. And this area that they were looking into, the area that was trying to help them, was the New Age metaphysical realm. And I thought, you know what? This is part of this phenomenon if this is something that's going on. And it's part of this phenomenon in a way that needs to be looked at more in depth. So I went down that road. And as I went down that road to learn as much as possible to see what they were trying to do for these people, I myself got sucked into the New Age metaphysical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of think that happened because I realized there was something missing in my life. And and now I look back on it and I realize what had happened. You know, I created a hole when I walked away from the church. I may not have been walking with Jesus at that time, but I created that hole when I walked away. And my soul was looking for to refill, you know, to fill that hole back up.
Mm-hmm.
And this realm, this New Age metaphysical realm, was offering an opportunity to fill that hole. And looking back on it, it was a way to fill that hole and be spiritual, to have my spirituality, but without any accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was no holes barred in the New Age metaphysical realm. You know, drugs were prevalent in the New Age metaphysical realm. They still are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's pretty much originated out of the 60s, late 50s, 60s, from the hippie generation. And it's the same ideas, you know, from the Woodstock era that's just prevalent still today. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
still got new people coming into it that didn't know that it's something that's very old, actually. It's called New Age, but it's actually not. It's been around for a long time.
Right.
But it was seductive. And I think the most seductive part about it is the no accountability. And the other part that was seductive to it, that pulls you in, it's about special knowledge. Um, it entices you with, here's something you can know that other people don't know. Here's the secrets revealed, you
Hmm.
know, and that is very seductive to people even today. People are wanting instant gratification. They're wanting instant knowledge. They don't want to work for anything. They want it given to them, in as quick as possible. They want a quick fix. Well, New Age metaphysical realm is a quick fix. I spent about 4.5 years in that realm, still practicing my research into abductions, still being a UFO investigator. And I finally got to a point in 1996, late 1996, November 96, after a very, very busy year. I was working full time at a boat company. I did 24 years with them, and we were on major overtime. I'm still trying to run the local MUFON group. I'm doing investigations, and I'm getting exhausted. And I'm a father at the same time, and but I wasn't married, but I was a father. And there was a girlfriend that I had at the time that was actually one of our investigators with us. And it was a good thing that she was helping us out because if you don't know, most abductees, experiencers are women. And the stories that come out of their testimonies when you start interviewing them can be very sexual in nature.
Hmm.
And it can be uncomfortable sitting alone with them, and probably not a good idea having them go through all of this. So we either had her present with us as we took their information, or I let her do the work and then she shared it with us. So I was glad to have her working with us, and that's kind of how we met at one of the meetings. Um, Interesting thing was she was a professing Christian, and here I was a crystal rolling New Ager, and we agreed that, hey, we'll get along good if we don't talk about politics and religion.
Hmm.
So made the agreement, got along fine. But then one day in November '96, she pulls me aside and says, "We need to talk." And I says, "Uh-oh, this don't sound good." She says, "No, it's going to be real good." And she says, "I see you are having issues. You're wearing down. I think you're being troubled by some of these experiences that you're investigating. They seem to be very dark in nature." And I said, "Yeah, they do." And she says, "I think you need some protection in this realm that you're working in, real protection." And I said, "Oh, I got all this protection." And I pulled out my little bag of gemstones and named off what each of them protect you from. She says, "No, no, no, put that away." She says, "I mean real protection." I said, "Well, what do you got?" Of course, we're always looking for that next new thing,
Hmm.
in the new age. And she says, it's right here. And she hands me a Bible. And I said, "Wait a minute." We agreed not to talk about that. And she goes, "No, I think we need to. What you need to look at is in here." And I said, "No, no, we're not going to go there." And then she called me out. You ever been called out? you know, she says, "You tell everybody you're the most objective, open-minded investigator there is." And I said, "Yeah, I like to believe I am." "Oh, then you'll take a look at this, right?" I said, "Oh, okay. I better take a look." I said, 15 minutes. Give me it in a nutshell. Well, that was the most amazing 15 minutes of my life because she shared the gospel message with me and what it could do for me and how it could protect me in a way that I have never heard it or understood it before. Like I said, I grew up until I was a senior in school, and I'd heard the gospel message, but nothing like this time, you know. And I said, "You know what? I want that protection. Show me what I got to have to get that protection." It wasn't that I didn't know it; it's that I had refused it, and that's a major point I want to make. That people that come against you about the Bible or whether it being authentic or valid, or God being real, or Jesus being who he said he was. It's not that they don't know who he is, it's they refuse to follow him. I say you'd be very, very lucky to find anybody in this world who hasn't heard of Jesus Christ.
Right.
They know who he is.
Mm-hmm.
They choose not to follow him. That's a major difference.
Yep.
So as I chose to follow him, I went on to make a profession of faith in my parents' church. Didn't know of any better place to do it except in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
And later went back for baptism in the same church. And I put it to my fellow researchers, my fellow field investigators, my lead investigator, come to find out he'd been a Christian the whole time, but here he was chasing UFOs with me, not thinking there was anything wrong with it. And I asked him, I said, you say you're a Christian. He says, yeah, I've been one a long time. I says, I don't want to wait a long time to understand what Christianity is about or who I am now as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus Christ. I'm a curious type of guy. I want to know right now. I don't want to sit through 50 Sundays of church or 50 years of church Sundays to find out what I am. I want to know now as much as possible. Is there any way to do that? And he says, that's a good question, and I got an answer for you. He says, I got a friend of mine that's got this Bible study course. Back then it was on VHS tape, and it was 2 hours long each tape. And he says it's 14 tapes. We could sit and do one a night if you got time. And it's pretty intense. He says, I've been through it. And it'll teach you a lot and get you to understand how the Bible works, how it's read, how it's put together, and what it's telling you. I said, that'd be great. That's a good start. So we talked about when we could do it. And like I said, this was November. And at the boat company, we shut down for 2 weeks every year at Christmas time and New Year, so maintenance can fix all the things going bad in the plant and get caught up. And I said, I got this 2 weeks off coming up. What do we do with it? And they said, yeah, well, let's do that. So we met at his friend's house and in his living room. Every night we'd plug a tape in. And then one night, I think it was about third or fourth night, I don't remember for sure which one it was, but we plugged a tape in, and the guy that's doing the talk on the tape, he says, we're going to talk about spiritual warfare. And I thought, oh, that sounds cool. Don't know what it means, but it sounds cool. And he started in by reading a piece of scripture, and it was Ephesians 6:12. And for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principality, powers, spiritual wickedness in the heavenly places. He didn't get barely started on that verse. And I'm watching the tape on the TV, and all of a sudden, this vision of an alien gray comes right up in front of my face. And I'm looking at this like stunned. It's as clear as a bell, like it's really there. And as he finishes the verse, it morphs into the most horrific thing I had ever seen. And stunned, I said, stop that video. And both the guys looked at me and they were like, what's wrong? And I said, you're not going to believe what I just saw. And I explained it to them what I saw, and they're like, wow. And I said, I think I was just shown what we've been dealing with. And, they both agreed. They had suspicion, but still just suspicion. I said, I don't want to be dealing with this stuff anymore. I want to continue and learn what I need to be a Christian, a good follower of Jesus Christ. But I said, if this is what this realm is that we've been meddling in, I said, I'm going to get out of this. And my partner at the time, my fellow, investigator, he says, agreed. If you want to get out of this, I'm with you. And we'll just move on to becoming good followers of Jesus. And I said, okay. Well, we had a plan. We figured that was it. We went through the rest of the course. It was fascinating, and I learned a lot. But it wasn't but a couple of weeks later that I got this small, still voices telling me, you're not done. And I'm like, I'm not done. I'm not done. And the only thing I could relate it to is I said I was done doing the research. And I said, I don't know if God talks to you or not, but I'm done. I know what this is. I don't need to be part of this. It's not good to be this and following Jesus Christ.
Hmm.
A couple of weeks went by and you're not done. And I'm going like, oh, here we go again. And I said, I am done. And then I get, you need to take the truth back to where you came from. And I'm thinking, oh, no, 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 no. I'm not taking this truth back to the New Age where I just came from because they don't believe the Word of God to be the inerrant Word of the Creator of the universe.
Hmm.
They give you all sorts of excuses what they believe the Bible is. I said, you got to give me something better than that. I figured that ended that conversation. Well, again, a little while later, you already have what you need. And I'm thinking, this is getting crazy. Am I going crazy? But this conversation is not heading in the right direction.
Hmm.
So I talked to my Christian investigator buddy and shared with him what was happening. He goes, wow. And I said, what do we already have that I could take back and share with this realm? The truth. I said, I only got this because I had a vision in front of my face. I said, I can't take that back as evidence. I said, what do we have that we supposedly already have that I can't remember, and maybe you can remember, that I would be truth enough to take back to these people? He says, I don't know. He says, all we got is recorded case testimonies because we were recording experiencers' testimonies.
Hmm.
So we went back and looked through the testimonies on the tapes that we had used to record on. And lo and behold, this one gentleman that we had interviewed in his home, um, he's telling the story. I'm sitting there watching it. I'm going like, I don't even remember this. And my partner says, I vaguely remember this. Well, he's telling a story about how he had sighting this one evening where he lived, and then dogs were agitated. And he finally went to bed, finally got the dogs calmed down, and then during the night he has this experience, abduction type experience. But then it turns really bad. And he says that he felt like he was being levitated up on a pole shoved up his rectum. And he was in severe agony and pain. And in this agony and pain and fear, the only thing he could think of was something that these people in this little church that he'd been going to because he was recently got married,
Hmm.
and his wife was a Christian and had introduced him to this little church. And he was becoming a Christian himself. But as a new believer, he remembered in this sheer panic something that they had told him. In a time of need, call out to Jesus.
Hmm.
So the only thing that he could think of was to say, Jesus, Jesus, help me. And when he did, the experience instantly stopped
Hmm.
and he fell to the bed. And I'm looking at my partner. I said, do you remember any of this? And he says, I don't. And we had recorded this like 6 months before I became a believer.
Hmm.
So even though it was in our face, we didn't see it. And I said to my partner, I said, if this is real, this is huge.
Hmm.
Because we had learned in our research in the beginning into abductions that you could not stop abductions. That's what was constantly being said.
Hmm.
And I said, yet this man had stopped me. So I had to find out whether it was even real. So I reached out to some of the top leading researchers in the UFO and abduction community. Back then, we didn't have cell phones. We called them on their landline. You could look
Hmm.
them up in a phone book and find out their number. Today, it's kind of hard to do that.
Hmm.
But I found them, and I called them at their home, and I said, guys, I got an unusual case here, abduction case, and I could use some help on trying to understand it. And they said, sure, share with us what you got. Each one I talked to, I'd share the story. And once I shared the story, each of the people I talked to asked the same thing. Can we go off the record from here? And I said, sure, I don't mind going off the record. I just want some help in understanding what I've got here. Is it real? Is it not? Is it a hoax? Going off the record is something that we are bound by with MUFON. If somebody asks to go to be, have anonymity, we must respect that by law.
Mm-hmm.
So I do to this day. So I told them, I said, yeah, anonymity is no problem. Just help me here. Well, every one of them told me that, yes, they had come across similar experiences, similar cases, where people had hummed a hymn, Christian hymn, recited scripture, sang a hymn, prayed, and the experiences stopped. And I said, wait a minute. Nowhere is that written. All of you say that they can't be stopped. So what's happening here? What's going on? And the first response I got from each of them was, we didn't know what to make of it. And that's an honest answer. I would accept that answer and move on. But for some reason, I don't know if it was their conscience or whatever, they always had a second answer. And that second answer was, we were afraid to go there because it might affect our credibility in the research realm. And I said, guys, I got nothing to lose. I work for a living. I'm researching on the side. I'm not relying on conference talks or book sales or anything. I'm just trying to get the truth out there. And you're verifying that what I have is authentic, that it's happened. And you're also telling me that there's more cases out there. I said, if you're afraid to or can't, for whatever reason, document these cases, I says, I'm going to take these cases and I'm going to document them. And I'm going to make sure this piece of the puzzle gets to the table so that we can get an honest picture and understanding of what this UFO puzzle is. And they all said in agreement, please do, because we can't. So they were encouraging me to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay. I thanked them and I moved on. We put ourselves out there that we were looking for these types of cases. They started to come in. We had a handful to show that, yeah, what they're saying is true. There's more like it. These people were just not getting their story told, or they weren't finding somebody that would accept their stories, in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So we let them know that we were looking for these types of testimonies to build that database for that piece of the puzzle. We ended up having an opportunity for a newspaper article in our local newspaper. And we thought, all right, we made it big time. We got 2-page coverage in our local people section of our local newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And as the weeks went by, I'm starting to get calls in because they posted my phone number. And these calls were people saying, I saw your story in my local paper and I wanted to share with you. That's my testimony. I'd like to give you my testimony. Well, back then we had these little boxes you put beside your phone called an ID caller.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see that these were not local phone calls. So I'd ask them, I said, where are you calling from? They'd say Wisconsin, Iowa, Ohio, whatever. And I said, what do you mean your local paper? This was in my local paper. And they said, no, it was in our local paper too. So I contacted my local paper and I said, what's happening here? And my local paper is called the Florida Today. And it comes to find out that Florida Today paper is an affiliate of Gannett News. And what had happened is when they ran the story in our local paper, Gannett News ran it in the rest of their affiliates across the country. This is nothing that we could have done on our own.
Mm-hmm.
This was an absolute godsend because
Mm-hmm.
cases started to come in from all over the country. And then this was the time of the early internet. I didn't even have a computer at the time. My partner did, that I was working with, but I didn't. I had basic web TV at the time just to chat on.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a news service called CNI News that had started up early on the early internet, and it had all sorts of crazy news stories on it. Well, whoever was running that at the time picked up that article and ran it on the early internet. So now we went from local paper to national to international
Wow.
in our research. So now I'm getting testimonies coming in from other parts of the world. And then a buddy of mine says, "You get UFO magazine out of England?" I said, "No, I know it's the number one UFO magazine that there is, and it was at the time." And he says, "You need to get this much copy." And I said, "Okay." So I ordered the copy, and it came in, and lo and behold, UFO magazine picked up the article from the internet
Wow.
and posted the entire article in UFO magazine out of England. There's no way my partner and I could have done that type of marketing at all. We went worldwide with the information. Talk about taking it back to where you came from.
Yeah.
And the thing about it, we were now at the point of no return. It was out there far enough that nobody could have put the genie back in the bottle at
Mm-hmm.
that point. And over the past 25 years, I've worked with well over 600 testimonials cases, and I've got about 250 or so, and more coming in all the time that I can actually share publicly. Most of the testimonies they want help and understanding to be able to put the experience away and not to have it as part of a life pattern anymore,
Mm-hmm.
which I work with them to be able to do that. And a lot of times they don't even want to share the testimony, even though I share with them how important it is to help the next person get free.
Mm-hmm.
But first and foremost, I want to help these people. Um, if I get a testimony out of it that I can add to the collection to show the people that, hey, this is something that needs to be looked at. Um, it's not a joke. People are being helped in this manner. These experiences can be terminated in this manner. Then that's what we do.
Mm-hmm. Several things come to mind there. One is, when you're sharing that, I'm thinking, when the Bible says different times that God is not willing that we should be ignorant. Ignorant is not stupidity. It's a lack of knowledge. Ignorance,
Yes.
you don't know, it's
Yeah,
not being stupid. It's being, without the knowledge.
I learned it
And
two ways: either never taught
Mhm.
or wrongly taught,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
we see both prevalent.
Yes. And the other thing that was coming to mind, when you're talking the metaphysical, it's the things, crystals and these different things. It's that's the
Yes.
occult. And
Yes.
you said that, they're promising you this knowledge that no one else has. That's what occult means. It's
Yes.
hidden knowledge. That's what the word means.
Yes.
And that's what they promise. And that's what gets people led astray, So it's interesting, it seems like, and one reason I wanted to touch on all this, it seems to me like in mainstream media, they'll go to great lengths to tell the other side of the story, but they don't want to tell any of this,
No.
and that involves the UFO people, the field that handles that or promotes that through media or television, and also the paranormal.
Sure.
They will not really share a truly biblical point of view, even though it's the answer. All the questions regarding the paranormal, regarding these things, they're all right in Scripture, and it's really not that hard to understand. But there's a they don't want that truth out there. Well, that concludes part 1 of the truth about UFOs and alien abduction with Joseph Jordan and Rhiannon Alley. Be sure to tune in to part 2. and get the rest of the interview with both of these fantastic guests. Again, I'd like to thank you for tuning in to the podcast. Please subscribe, like, and share. And again, feel free to share your comments. If you would also like to support the podcast, you can do that as well by going to Amazon and picking up a copy of Nightmare in Holmes County or 225th Street, which both tell terrifying true stories of spiritual warfare and paranormal activity in real-life haunted houses. Both books are available at Amazon as audiobook, paperback, and Kindle. If you would like to contact Joseph Jordan, you can reach him at ce4president@yahoo.com, or you can check out the CE4 website at www.ce4research.com. Again, that is www.ce4research.com. You can also pick up a copy of Joseph Jordan's research book, Piercing the Cosmic Veil, subtitled You Shall Not Be Afraid of the Terror by Night, at Amazon.com as a paperback or Kindle version. Thanks once again for tuning in. Until next time, good night and God bless.